It's 7 p.m. on Monday, July 7th, 2025, and I call this regular council meeting to order. I'd like to thank everybody who's in the audience and everybody who's listening to us online this evening. And I would like you to join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would also, all are present except one. I'm glad that we have, so you're going to be running this. Okay. So we have Director Madden and Director Stallnecker and Director Robeck, and also we have the chief. But we're minus Councilperson Peretti, so if somebody would like to, he's absent this evening, so if I could have a motion to excuse him.
Make a motion to excuse Councilmember Peretti.
Second.
Thank you. So that was moved by Councilmember Slater and seconded by Councilmember Hall to excuse Councilmember Peretti. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. I believe that would be 6-0. Now we're on to citizen participation, and the purpose for the public comment period for this meeting is for those wishing to address the council on any matter. It is not intended for debate and discussion with the public. Please state your name when you come up and your city for the record. And lastly, we kindly remind you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I like saying that anyway, we have nobody on the list. And so we will move on to additions and deletions. Are there any additions or deletions this evening? So seeing that there are none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Anybody would like to move to pass the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. So that was passed that was moved by Councilmember Slater or what am I doing? Strader, sorry. And seconded by Councilmember Whalen. I'll get it. To pass the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Now we're going to move on to, we only have, well, technically, I'm going to say 2 items, but the first is the public hearing for the amendments to Title 16 on subdivisions. And that'll be presented to us by Director Stallnecker. After she, or I should say we're opening the public hearing. I forgot about that part, correct? At 7:03.
I'll give a brief presentation, and then if there's any public comment, and then you can close.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So before you tonight, the public hearing is for the amendments to Title 16. This relates to unit lot subdivisions, short plats, binding site plans. The overall goal is to increase the supply and affordability of home ownership. This is reinforced by 2 comprehensive plan goals. In the housing section, encourage the provision of a variety of quality housing types, densities, and levels of affordability to meet the diverse needs of residents and to address Milton's affordability gap. And number 2, ensure adequate and affordable housing for all economic segments of the community for current and projected residents of Milton. This also provides standards and a process for unit lot subdivisions. Currently, unit lot subdivisions are allowed in the state, but we don't have specific criteria of how we want to process those. So these gives us the framework so that we can do that when someone comes in and asks. So a reminder, this was all discussed at the June 9th study session. There is one change that is a correction. On page 41, it's kind of highlighted in gray. Under unit lot subdivisions, the original draft had said there would be that the final recording needed to be within 1 year, but there's actually two different types depending on how many lots. We either, if it's 4 or under for unit lot subdivisions, we follow the short plat process, which is 1 year. But if they choose to do, like if it's in a multifamily zone and they're doing more than 5 or more, they would follow the long plat process, which is 5 years. So the correction simply says follow the appropriate section when it comes to the expiration. So a reminder of what a unit lot subdivision, because it is the new one. The idea is that there is a parent lot. So if it was in a single family zone, you might have a house with the 1 or 2 ADUs. Those buildings on the parent lot have to meet all of the minimum guidelines, the size, the setbacks, the coverage, everything has to fit within that. And then you're allowed to create little mini lines around your houses that those can be sold individually, and all the common area, everything that's left is owned in common. This can also be done with an apartment complex if you're in the multifamily zone. So maybe there's 9 townhouses. They can carve out, basically it's like a condo, but you're owning the outside of the building as well as the inside of the building, and then everything else is owned in common. So parking, stormwater, yards, everything like that. So again, this is already allowed in the state, but we didn't have specific criteria of what we wanted those to look like, how we wanted those to be processed. This does that for us. We also, the Planning Commission, also added or amended other definitions that we felt were just needed to be sort of updated. We also, under the short subdivision, we realized there was sort of a conflict between the definition and the subsection, so we made sure that those matched. A short subdivision by state law can be anywhere between 4 and 9 lots. The Planning Commission chose to recommend to leave it at the 4 lots that could be created to be sold, but that there could be up to 2 common owned tracts. And this is for short subdivisions. This is your traditional, you're going to sell it and put a house on it or something to that effect. So you could have 2 bonuses for critical areas, stormwater, open space. Also created that 1-year deadline. Binding site plan, which we already use. Most of the time that is for like retail stores or industrial parks. We have, but you can also use it for condos. We basically just updated that section as well, gave it better criteria, better requirements for what needs to be on that recorded face, and brought it up to all the current standards. Already talked about unit lot subdivisions. The Planning Commission did recommend this after a public hearing. Currently, right now, the City Council is holding their public hearing, and it is later on the agenda for discussion and hopefully approval.
Now I will open the public hearing at 7:08 to take public comment on the Milton Municipal Code, Title 16, related to subdivisions, short plats, and binding site plans. If anyone would like to come up and speak, as I said before, please state your name and city and for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Clay Howard. I live here in Milton. I'm just curious. So this, of course, they're going to be paid for the owner of the lot. He's going to pay that bill. These are like EDUs. Is that what I understand? And then he's going to be able to sell them. So the people will own like that corner of his property. Is that how it's going to work?
Your comments have to be directed to council, and then when we get to the conversation part, they can ask me to answer all of that. A public hearing, you're just making your comments to council, but they
So
can,
I'm just curious about that.
they can request that under our discussion that I expand on that.
If people sell these corners of their lots, I'm concerned about parking. We had that problem just up here at Diamond Street. you know, and it was all designed for townhouses, but we had barely enough parking. That's all I'm really concerned about right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Having received all comments, I now close the public hearing at 7:10. Now we will move on to, now we're on the regular agenda. We're going to item 7A, ordinance 2116-25 for amendments to the Milton Municipal Code, Title 16. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Do you want to do a motion, or do you want me to share a
Is
little
there
bit?
anything else you wanted to add first, and then we can go to the motion?
Do you want me to address the comments that were raised?
That'd be, or unless you,
Pardon? I have a question about the whole setup of this right now. If you don't mind,
no, go.
is this being broadcast?
Pardon?
Can people at home see this meeting tonight?
Yes, it is live.
Yes.
Why is nothing illuminated for them to follow?
Oh, the screens?
The screens. Because generally, that's what we do in a council meeting, is project things that we're talking about so that the general public can see and keep up with the process. But there's nothing for the public that may be online looking at this. We're a little bit out of, you might say, style of what we generally
done
do.
that-
I think what, if I may, I think what Councilman Whalen is referring to is if this was up on the screens, if the,
I don't believe council can correct me, but I don't believe we've regularly been doing that unless it's a study session and there's a PowerPoint presentation.
I believe that's incorrect. I believe we should be, especially in a document that may have had changes from the study session, to be viewed by the general public. And I thought that's why we had the TVs, and why we had participation. So we're playing in the dark now.
That sounds like, excuse me for speaking out of turn, but I think that might be a conversation for council on whether they want us to in the future have everything up, but we have not, to this point, had those things that I'm aware of.
I think it should be shared with the public. If we're speaking on a section in here with the change and so forth, if they didn't participate in the study session, they don't know where we are or what we're doing with this. But I believe that the general public has the right to see what we're doing and going through this.
so in this regard, we're going to be doing it verbally.
Everything is in the packet that was
Is-
posted
yeah,
online.
true.
Nothing has changed since the posting of the packet. I don't have anything to add if we want to start with the
Okay,
motion.
so would anybody like to make a motion for this amendment? Councilmember Cedar?
I move to adopt ordinance 2116-25, adopting amendments to Title 16.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember White. I want to go to the right one? It was there.
51.
Yep.
You're looking for the ordinance number?
Yeah, I got myself a little. It's here. I got it. There we go. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, to move to adopt ordinance 2116-25, adopting amendments to Title 16.
Would you like me to address the questions that were raised during the hearing?
Yes.
Thank you.
As a point of order, excuse me, if I may speak to my motion.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to keep us on the right track, following the
Keep
rules.
us on the right track,
Yes, yes.
please.
So I appreciate this motion coming forward. It's complying with state law. I do believe it's a good thing to have a process in place. I also support housing choice. I think that's one of the freedoms that we need to embrace in how we're building houses in Milton. My understanding of this, and I think to the audience's point that I'll hope you will address your responses to Planning Manager Stallnecker. But my understanding of this is that this functions as a way to give someone flexibility within the property they own so they can create a joint ownership of the larger property, but individual ownership of the building they're in. Similar to, like you said, a condo, but where you're owning the building structure as well. So I think of standalone structures. When I look around Milton, I think we're starting to see similar structures pop up just right across the street on 11th. We see kind of some side-by-sides. That's not quite this, I don't think, unless I'm wrong. But those shared spaces that kind of get more individuals onto a plot of land. To me, the reason why I like this thing, understand that there are concerns of density. That's always a concern in Milton. But I don't want to see Milton concentrate its density in one place by building an apartment structure that doesn't fit with a community feel. And I think that we have housing goals we need to meet. Density is going to continue to go up. And I don't like the way that Edgewood has handled their layouts, where they've concentrated on Meridian. I think that it creates a less community-focused city. So I think that this is a good option for Milton to fill in the middle housing that we're currently missing. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Councilmember White, would you like to speak to your second?
Sure. I agree with everything Councilmember Cedar said, but I would like to hear the answer to the question, because I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought of the parking issue, and I just wondered how that would be handled.
Okay. Apologize. I think we're all a little out of sorts when our leadership is not here for a normal process. The only thing I was going to add to that is that we do have, so this is the part that lets you turn something into ownership. This is the process that lets you turn something in ownership. You're allowed to build ADUs right now, even with outside of this, they would just all be owned by the same property owner. So the ADU rules that we have adopted does require that one parking space per bedroom for any addition. So like you require 2 for your first house, and then you have to have 1 space per every bedroom if you do ADUs, and there's a limit of 2 bedrooms per ADU. So we have tried to address under the ADU criteria, or if it was apartments, townhouses under the townhouse criteria, things like parking, things like open space, that kind of thing. This just lets you choose to either you own them all as one and you're renting them, or you can basically, idea is that you're condoing the land in the building and allow you to sell them. So it gives you that option of turning them into
The
ownership.
parking regulation is the same regardless.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If this is the time, and so
Councilmember Whalen? if you'd like.
I'm a little curious about selling off ADUs and making them individual lots. Is that what you were alluding to when you were speaking about the
So
ADUs tonight?
the state currently allows what is called, yes, a unit lot subdivision, where you have your parcel, and if you have, let's say, a house and 2 ADUs, under current state law, you can basically make little interior, what we're calling unit lots, that allows you to buy them and sell them individually, and then everything else. So the parking's going to be shared. Some of the yard might be shared. If there's a common drainage, that would be shared. So it's already allowed by state law. What this does is it gives us the process and the parameters to make sure that we are making sure that on the final document, they have recorded everything correctly, that they follow the timelines that we want. It gives us that process to make sure that it's being followed the way we would like it to be followed.
Well, the question, how many driveways should put on that piece of property? Are they individual, or do they use a common driveway to get back towards the ADUs?
They would have to, they have to follow the same rules as the primary parent lot, so they would get one driveway. Even if there's ones in the back, they would have to somehow be able to access either all the parking's in front, but they're only allowed one driveway, maximum 20 feet, like any other residence in, if we're talking neighborhood residential.
Maximum 20 feet?
If, again, that's if it's, without sidewalks, everyone sort of does what they want. But if it was a curb cut, it would be 20 feet, yes.
I'm looking at a house that's very close to my neighborhood that is made, I believe there's 4 ADUs on the property. And the common driveway to get to the ones in the back are significantly long, and I'd say about 60 feet from the curb back to the back property. It may be even 90 feet.
I was talking width, not length. But the ones, if you're talking about the ones that are just next to you to the, I guess it would be the north, that is, the 3 in the back is a flag lot. So they're their own, they have one house and 2 ADUs, and they have their own driveway because it's its own parcel.
Okay,
And then it has a house with, I think, 1 ADU in the front, which is a different parcel.
I'm a little confused on that property too, because there's the original house, which is 1. There was a garage which has been turned into a dwelling unit, and there are 3 ADUs in the back.
We can discuss that particular property later if you'd like. And I can show you, I can provide you the site plan so you can see where all the different structures are and what lot they are at.
Yeah, I'm just looking towards the future to see how that's going to function and so forth, because that main one driveway is serving at least 3.
It's serving 3, correct?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I agree with Councilmember Cedar that, I mean, this is a movement in the right direction. The one thing that occurred to me was, so when you're getting the ADUs and you're kind of, it's been addressed, so you're dealing with the cars that you're also introducing into the equation. Is it taken into account too that with that, you're going to need more services because you're having, more people in that neighborhood driving cars? Is that kind of taken into account, road maintenance and things like that? Because now you're, what's the chance of you're adding, a third, 2/3 more cars on that street, in that driveway?
So again, happy to answer the question, but just to clarify, the amendments before you today are simply the procedures to make them sellable, not allowing them to be built because that's under the ADU or multifamily. Under the ADU code, which the council approved last year, they do pay 50% of the traffic impact, they do pay 50% of the park impact, and they do pay 50% of the school impact for each of the ADUs. They pay 100% for the first house, or if it's a duplex, they would pay 100% for each. And they will pay, the utilities do require them to have meters, so they have to pay the hookup charges as well. The only thing is that we have discussed is traffic impact is more for new things. So it's like we've been using it for sidewalks. It's not necessarily maintenance, but it does bring money in for that, but not specifically maintenance of roads.
And also, thanks for the reminder. Anybody else? Councilmember Strader?
Can you briefly explain how this makes more affordable housing for the city?
Yeah, because so right now, if a house is 4,000 square feet, they're selling for $750,000 or more. If you are building a house that is a ADU that is 1,000 or less square feet, and you're sharing all of that lot, that price tag for that, for that home was going to be significantly less. That will allow a lot of people who couldn't afford the $750,000, $80,000 house to purchase one for a lot less. And so it allows a lot more affordable housing by allowing it to be sold. It's not just a rental. Somebody could purchase that home. It could be their starter home, or if there's someone who happens to be single and older or elderly, it's something more manageable. But if it's a starter home, they're going to be able to build equity in it and then be able to sell when they start their family or whatever and get into something else. So it's creating those smaller, better priced housing structures.
So what is the setback for the rear of the property if you're putting an ADU? Is it 20 feet?
It's 25.
25.
In our neighborhood
So-
residential one.
In Councilmember Whalen's situation, there was already an existing garage there, and they turned that into an ADU. The setback on that building was 7 feet.
7 feet from the back line.
So there
So
is,
how do they, it just seems like they're skirting the requirements of setbacks by doing this.
yeah, the ADU code does say that any existing structure prior to the adoption date, which I think that section was the January of this year. So any existing structure prior to that can be converted even if it doesn't meet the setbacks, part of state law. Any new structure has to meet that 25.
So there's no way that we could put in some kind of provision that would prevent that kind of thing.
No, but again, anything, it had to have been built prior to, permitted and built prior to January 2025. So they can't now build something and then a year later try to get around it. So it has to be something that's older before we required it.
Okay. And for a driveway, can they move where the existing driveway is and move it to a side section of the house so that they can have access to the other
They can-
ADUs if they
They
want to
can
put?
move it. It just, in theory, needs to be one driveway. Again, it's hard in those areas that don't have sidewalks because already you will find properties where someone has a garage in the back and they park here and they park there and they sort of drive wherever. But they have to show that what is their designated driveway. And if people are talking about, well, I park here or there, we've always said once sidewalks go in, which some of these streets have, Fifth Ave was one of those prime examples, they had to choose what is your driveway and they have to meet all of those codes. So when we're designing properties, when I look at that site plan, I'm looking at it from the idea that you're only going to get one curb cut, so you can't be assuming you're going to drive wherever, so.
Okay, so one other question for the setbacks, how are you determining where the setbacks are? Or how are you going, taking that measurement? Is it by existing fence? Or if there is no fence, how do you determine where that setback is?
So to some extent, there is some responsibility put on the property owner and developer to know where those property lines are. Depending on what it is, like if it's a multifamily thing, we're definitely requiring surveys. If it is, in most cases with the ADUs, if it looks as our best available information, if it looks like it's meeting that, we're going to go with that.
But my question would be, why wouldn't we require a survey to be done if there's any kind of, if somebody wants to put a fence in or they're changing the structure at all so that we know that they are in compliance with what the setbacks are, so.
It's cost prohibitive. It's thousands of dollars to have a survey. And I would think, in most cases, if you're putting up a fence in the community, asking them to spend, I mean, I know there was a lot of discussion on whether or not to even charge for a permit and the cost of that. If you required a survey, it could be $4,000, $5,000 to do a survey. That's really cost prohibitive. And so in most cases, unless there's some sort of legal dispute between property owners, we're not going to require that
How is $4,000 cost per,
to put
if
up a
they're
fence.
selling these houses for $750,000 or more? How is that cost prohibitive?
It's not currently something that's required. And that, if that's something that council wants to discuss at a later thing, but it's not, you were asking about a fence, and that's what I said for a
Yeah,
fence. It'd
yeah,
be
I'm, well,
terribly cost
or
prohibitive.
whatever the setback is, whether they're changing it, it's just, that's just the example I
Yeah,
used for.
the only time
in
we've
in a
done
case
it-
of a fence.
Yeah, it's not something we would normally require. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other,
Just to add to
Councilmember
that a
Whalen.
little bit. If I was to put in an accessory dwelling unit on my property, of which I believe I have more than enough place to do it, and I wanted to put it in the back of my yard, the existing yard, still owning and so forth, how do you know that the building without a survey is intruding on the clear space that is required by code? How is it you can just trust somebody saying, well, that's where my fence has always been, but it doesn't mean it's always been in the right place? How is it that we encourage or don't discourage not having a property boundary assessed and appropriately so? Because you can look at things and just say, well, it's 6.5 feet, or you can look at it and say, no, it's 7 and a little more than 7. But how do you justify being able to allow a house to be built without solid boundary lines established on a piece of property currently? How does that happen?
Currently, it is not a requirement for single-family houses. In the code, it lists what is required for approval and submission. A survey is not one of those.
I'm not talking about a single-family house. I'm talking about an accessory dwelling unit.
That falls under the same criteria.
Family. And the single family doesn't require a boundary line identification to
Correct.
build a house. Because that's happening in another location on 13th Avenue also. There's a dispute about where the physical boundaries are. It's a narrow lot, it's a 60-foot lot, I believe. And I think it's going to come up before the city here shortly. That's a difficult one without having set corners. Now, my property, I've got set corners. This is the first thing I did when I bought the property. And it's been certified, I should say, again, by a neighbor who has had the same survey done. So, now, another question and so forth. Emergency vehicles. There's been contention in the past about development going on a lot. 4 houses go into the back, and the emergency vehicles can only pull down. They can't turn around. There's not enough room and so forth. Is there anything changed in our code that allows narrower driveways or access into properties? What's the set size? Is it wide enough for 2 vehicles or 1? Because you're now going to compete with 3 or 4 other buildings on a small piece of property. What is the requirement for the width of a road? Let's just say the neighbor next to me, and I'm not dissing the guy, he's doing a great job. But what is the requirement of the road for emergency vehicles? The access to the 3 houses in the back. Do we have a standard?
So again, it falls under the single-family dwelling, and those are
Well,
20 feet,
but it's multiple.
but it doesn't fall under multifamily category.
It's multiple houses, not individual, one house and so forth. I could see where you got control of the whole property. But if you got this one road and you got a house on both sides, one on this side, one on this side, one on this side, one on this side, do we require anything different for emergency vehicles on those types of access roads, access driveways, whatever you want to call them?
The short answer, I guess, 2 answers to that. Not in general, no. But that particular property, because it was a boundary line adjustment to create that back lot, it was reviewed by the fire department.
Okay. So that change in the process involved the fire department. Do we know what the standards the fire department requires?
They look at our standards for the most part.
Well, is there any way we could learn what they require? Can
Yeah,
can
I
you
mean-
provide that information?
Yes.
Okay, because I believe there's a circumstance to come in the future that may challenge that a little bit.
Councilmember Hall, did you want to go? Are you? Okay. Councilmember Strader.
Is there a timeline that we're supposed to get this thing done by, or are we meeting some kind of deadline to get this pushed through, or?
So, unit lot subdivision is currently allowed in the state. So, right now, we have no process or standards to guide us. So if outside of what the state requires, so if someone came in to do it, we can't require much. This provides us the framework of what we want to, how we want to process it, how we want the final plat to say, all the different the areas that we have discretion in. It is those areas that we can identify and adopt. So this provides me more tools to process it than we have now. Right now, I would just sort of have to allow it.
Yeah, I noticed that there were quite a few sections where paragraphs were scratched out. And was that with our current code? And so now we're removing certain languages in here. And I'm wondering, if it must be necessary, I guess, otherwise you wouldn't have done that. But I'm just curious, is
Yeah,
that
so
a lot of language taken out?
are you talking about page 43 and 44?
46, 43, and 44, yeah.
Yeah, so those are existing codes. What we've done, so basically starting on 43 is the binding site plan code that we currently have. So what we have done is, one, on page 44, it talks about access standards. We have another section that outlines all the access standards, so if anything, it causes usually conflict if you have it in two spots, because you end up correct, maybe you amend one and then the other didn't, and then there's arguments. So basically, it just says, instead of listing them all, it says go to where we keep our access standards, which is in 1612-040D. And then we've added, again, there wasn't much in the binding site plan that said what had to be on the actual adopted final site plan. And so we've added language that says this is what needs to be on the face of it when you record it. And there really wasn't anything that talked about, how the approval went and when the final had to be. And so basically, we added more criteria, more standards, so that when someone comes in for a binding site plan, it has a much more robust standard than it does previously.
Well, I was just curious about it's on page 44, section E, or now K, where that paragraph was cut out, and it says the face of the binding site plan shall be included in notification of any obligation by an adjoining landowner. Why is there not, a notification isn't going to be required to notify the landowner now?
So the binding site plans are processed as, under the same process as a full plat. And so, yes, binding site plans have notice to 500 feet, has a public hearing, and has, the final decision is made by the hearing examiner. So basically, this is, that particular thing was talking about notifying if they have to maintain an access. And then it talks about the access standards. Again, we have access standards in another section. We replaced it with L that goes through all of the things that we want on the final binding site plan, which would address a lot more than what we previously asked for. It talks about how you have to label it, all the different notes that have to be and that that the whole development meets the standards of the zone. So, and it's we've actually expanded what's required.
Okay. So, but I'm still seeing that language where the landowner isn't being notified. I don't see that included in L.
So what it said was the notification of any obligation by an adjoining landowner to construct or maintain an access.
Yeah.
So that particular language, no, is not necessarily in there anymore.
Okay.
But did not feel that was, that it was covered in other areas, I guess.
All right. Thank you.
I've spoken a lot. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to it. I'm just going to ask you about utilities. Normally, in the city of Milton, your water meter and so forth is in the right of way. That's where they all sit. Next to me, there's 3 new water meters in the ground on private property, not on the right of way. Is that a change the city has made? Now, they're all together about 3 or 4 feet onto private property, not in the right of way. Is that what the city's going to do in the future, is to put it on private property?
You'd have to, I don't know, that's outside of my purview. You would have to discuss it with the water.
You know of it. You know where the 3 meters are on private property, not adjacent to the houses. It's all up on 13th, just a few feet into private property. These meters feed the 3 properties in the back, if my understanding is correct. But they're not on right of way. Is that how things are going to go in the future?
Standards moving forward will be to keep them in the right of way whenever possible.
Well, why wasn't that possible on this?
Our team decided that it was beneficial for an installation to set them right where they were. And it's very close on the line, but we can take another look at it.
Well, it's just because it's out of the ordinary, you might say. It was always in the right of way for your gained access. The city's gained access to their property, not being on private property.
Correct. We would like to keep those in the right of way whenever possible.
It should always be possible. Sorry. I mean, that's what the right of way was given for, is to put these things on. No, I appreciate that, and I'd like an answer on that soon. Just life's changing, and I want to change with it.
The answer is we will do our best to keep them in the right of way moving forward. And we can take a look at that survey map when the Panhandle was created, and that will give us a strong idea. They're within a foot of that right of way. And so we will strive in the future to set those in the right of way. So we do not want to access public or private property
Yes.
without permission.
I have another question, if I would. Help me on this one. What is the width of a road and so forth that's required for a fire truck? Or fire truck and aid truck to get on a piece of property? What's the width of the driveway? There was a contention with the builder on 15th, when 4 houses were built, not on 15th, but down a driveway. And there's 4 houses on the lot. It fits nice, it looks nice and so forth. But how big of a road is required for public safety purposes to gain access to homes? We have a certain street width that we build all our roads to and so forth. And usually it's wide enough for one vehicle to pass another. What's the access? I'm talking about the same property. What was that minimum access for that?
So the access is only required to be 20 feet. The pavement is 14.
The access is 20 feet, the pavement is 14? Okay, so you get 1 truck down there at a time or 1 truck out of there at a time. There's no,
Yeah, they would rather not go they have hoses that go, again, we review things with them. But yeah, they have hose, you know, they would rather not go too far if they don't have to, and then they use their hoses when they can, so.
Yeah, because the fire hydrants are what serve as a fire truck. And this particular group, they're 90 feet away from a fire, more than 90 feet away from the road, which makes them much more than 90 feet from a fire hydrant in this particular circumstance. I think there's one fire hydrant supplying water, which is 2 lots to the south, and the next fire hydrant is 1 or 2 lots to the north. So that's the hookup, and that's the extent and so forth. I didn't know if there is anything to provide a greater capacity for public services, safety services, on properties that are now going to be put 90 feet or more in the back of the front of a piece of property, which extends the requirement for fire services to get down there with a hose or a water truck if they've got one. I'm just curious how that's going to integrate. There's more complexity coming with this than we think, you know, the different setups.
Yep.
Because in the blue section that's marked out, it designates all of those parameters,
Yep.
width and
Yeah,
length. And so
and-
I'm assuming that this can be found somewhere else, and that's probably MMC.
Yeah, it's in
16, that's what I
1612
thought.
or for OD.
Yeah, it's just that information is found elsewhere.
Yep.
Okay. Any more discussion? So seeing none, so it has been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember White to move to adopt the ordinance 2116-25, adopting amendments to Title 16. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
Passes 4-2.
You voting?
Yes, I did. So it passes 4-2. Next, we're going on to council reports. I'll go first because my name's here. I met with Larry, I believe it's Levine, with forevergreentrails.org. It was a very interesting discussion. It turns out he knows Councilmember Cedar too. Guess he's made. And he was talking to me about, for instance, how we could use them to help us getting grant funding. They can assist us with that. For instance, to tie us in with Edgewood. And I guess we're signed in like an annual membership with them, I guess.
Correct.
So we can use them to help us, moving forward so we can connect, it's so the section that we have for Milton connecting to Edgewood is so small relative to the other sections that they have. So I'm interested in moving forward with them if they can help us, make that happen, make the process a little bit quicker. I say go for it. I'm done. Next, Councilmember Peretti isn't here, so Councilmember Cedar? Or White, excuse me, my bad. Councilmember Whitewood, sorry.
No apologies necessary because I have nothing to say.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Now, Councilmember Cedar.
I will also return your apology and no report.
Thank you. Councilmember Strader, you people are too kind.
I did have a citizen contact me who said that they tried to report fireworks violations and they were told by dispatch that it's just fireworks.
So, Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, my husband and I went to a movie, 4th of July, and we came back about 10. I go, I'm just going to drive around the city and see what's going on. And I have to give kudos to Chief Hernandez's group of young men and women. They were following the fireworks that was in the air, and they were looking to see where they came from. I was concerned because one was behind where the new fire station's gonna go, which is a very wooded area. And before I could get over there, we had somebody, one was driving the white truck, was out of the truck and down that property in seconds, so I appreciate that. Edgewood, my understanding, they had a code against it, but it looked more festive than I'd ever seen before, so even if our fireworks ballot gets approved, I'm not sure how we can regulate it, because obviously Edgewood could not. So that is concerning.
Councilmember Whalen?
I have not adding anything more to tonight's meeting.
We'll go to director's reports. Director Madden?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Director Snelldecker, do you have anything else?
I do, but fun stuff.
Okay.
I was asked to do a quick reminder of some of the events that are in July, because there's lots of summer events. Touch a Truck is next Thursday, I believe, July 17th, between 1 and 3:30. Wednesday, July 23rd is Music in the Park from 5 to 8. We've got 4 different groups playing, including one that's our employee. Our project manager is part of one of the groups. July 4th is a blood drive, if anyone would like to share their blood. Oh, is it not right on them? Is that August now? Oh, sorry, 24th. July 24th I have it as. And then July 26th is the community yard sale. So, right? Do I have it wrong?
Director Robeck? And the chief.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know what dispatch is out there telling people. I did review the fire stats, and we did have 9 online reports. And one of them was a duplicate report. And I spoke with the sergeant who worked the 4th of July, and they were very proactive, driving around, making contacts. And they said that if they made contact, that people were compliant if they felt that they were, when the officers talked to them, if they felt that they were being irresponsible with their fireworks. I also did get a report from the sergeant that the Pack Highway was very active and that there was tribal activity going on down there, and they were, I guess, more so than previous years, just doing a lot of fireworks down on the Pack Highway on tribal property. So another challenge for us in our future ballot measure to consider. And other than that, it was better than normal 4th of July.
Anything else for this evening?
I just wondered, were there any fire events because of the fireworks?
We did have a small grass fire that started down on Comet, and we believe it was related to the home right next to it.
Yeah.
And there's a particular home that we have had some ongoing issues with, and so we weren't surprised. But they were able to quickly extinguish it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was on a vacant lot next to that home.
All right. Seeing that all agenda items have been concluded, I adjourn this meeting at 7:54.
I have some exciting news to share about Further Trail. I just didn't want to steal the mayor's thunder.
Oh, yeah,
Down by Taylor.
Mayor Pro Tem. you mean.
Our house is up from Taylor.
Yeah, fire away.
There's probably 35 people in armchairs.
Okay.
Oh,
That's what you meant, okay.
Still going.
Yeah, I mean, talking to
It
them.
is what it is.
Oh, enough with that. No, they won't, it's not, they'll, right?
They will.
Right.
Larry was on the Hill during the legislative session championing our project and our legislation. So it's.
It worried me when I saw it.
I mean, I found that, oh, really?
That could take out neighborhoods.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow.
Doing,
Good.
Well, see, and two people.
living the dream. Crime fighting.
One day closer to retirement.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a one next to it.
I haven't checked my mail and so forth. I gotta check, ask Tony a question.
You get to Edgewood where all the other ones are, you know, they're. Yeah. So I'm very.
Don't forget Wednesday.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure Larry will know. I guess in a way he kind of did. Right, he did say that, he saw signs that were like 30%, 60%.
Do you have vacation?
No. She's having her GI done tomorrow.
Oh, no.
She had to
So
go
it's
home.
not something fun.
She called me, she was like, I gotta go home early, I forgot that I have to do the prep. I was like, yeah, you probably wanna be home for that.
I forget where this, oh.
Yeah, he was saying that.
Well, just remember where you put it, cause you're the only one who's
Be to sit down and it would be.
Yeah. Well, my previous career, I would be down there doing what he is doing. Meeting with senators.
Oh, okay.
Representatives. Making sure our project is front.
And he likes the idea of that enjoying underneath, that we voted on that. So I'm glad you guys voted on that.
We've had some major wins.
Where's the rest of the Chargers?
We need a whole nother bank.
Yeah.
We'll charge it off tomorrow.
It's weird that it's not sitting here.